The Apache woman closed her eyes to die, but woke up in a cowboy's bed instead. Wild West story. Her body was tired beyond words. Her throat burned with thirst, and her legs shook as if they might stop working at any moment. She had been walking for days, hiding when she heard distant sounds, moving again when silence returned. Now, even silence felt loud. She had once known this land as home. As a child, she ran freely across these plains, her laughter mixing with the wind. She remembered mornings when the air smelled fresh and evenings when stories were shared near the fire. Those memories felt like they belonged to another life, one that had slowly faded away. One by one, the people she loved were gone, some lost to sickness, some taken by fate, others scattered so far that she did not know if they still lived. The world had become too big and too empty at the same time. Her clothes were torn from travel and time. A shallow wound on her side ached with every breath, not deep enough to end her life quickly, but painful enough to drain her strength day by day. She had tried to clean it with water from a muddy stream, but it had done little good. Hunger followed her like a shadow. She had eaten nothing but a few dry roots and berries, and even those were hard to find. As evening approached, the sky turned orange and purple. The land around her was quiet, too quiet. No birds flew overhead. No animals moved in the distance. It felt as if the world itself was holding its breath. She reached a dry riverbed and slowly lowered herself down, her back resting against a large rock. The stone was cool, but even that small comfort did not last long. She closed her eyes for a moment, telling herself it was only to rest. But deep inside, she knew the truth. She had reached the end of her strength. She no longer feared what might come next. The fear had burned out days ago, replaced by a heavy calm. She thought of her mother's voice, soft and steady, teaching her how to read the sky. She thought of her father's quiet strength and the way he walked without sound. She wondered if they would be waiting for her somewhere beyond this life. The wind brushed against her face, carrying dust and the smell of dry earth. She whispered a short prayer in her heart, not asking for rescue, but for peace. If this night was to be her last, she wanted it to be quiet. She leaned her head back against the rock, her breathing slow and uneven. Time passed, though she could not tell how much. The sky grew darker. Stars began to appear, one by one, shining cold and distant. Her body felt light now, almost numb. The pain faded into the background as if it belonged to someone else. She felt herself slipping, not into sleep, but into something deeper. In her mind, images came and went. She saw herself as a young girl, standing by a river that still flowed with water. She saw faces she had not seen in years. She heard drums, faint but steady, like a heartbeat. The sounds grew softer, blending with the night. Her eyes fluttered open once more. The moon hung above her, pale and watchful. She wondered if anyone would ever find her here, or if the land would simply take her back, slowly and quietly. The thought did not trouble her. She was too tired to worry. She took a shallow breath and let her eyes close again, this time without effort. Her body relaxed fully against the earth. To her, it felt like the end of a long journey, and she welcomed it. The cold of the night crept closer, but she barely noticed. Not far away, the land remained still, hiding secrets in its shadows. The woman did not know that another life was moving through this same wilderness, following a different path. She did not know that her story was not finished yet. For now, there was only darkness, silence, and the slow rise and fall of her chest. The Apache woman had closed her eyes, believing she would never open them again. The sun rose slowly over the wide land, spreading pale light across the dry ground. Morning came quietly, as it often did in the Wild West, without care for who lived or who suffered beneath its glow. A lone cowboy rode through the open space, his horse moving at an easy pace. Dust lifted gently with each step of the animal's hooves. The cowboy had been traveling since early dawn, following no clear road, only instinct and habit. He was a man used to silence. The wide land had been his companion for many years. He had learned to listen to small signs, the way birds suddenly stopped calling, the marks left in the dirt, the feeling in the air that told him something was not right. That morning, something felt different. The land seemed too still, as if holding a secret. As he guided his horse toward a dry riverbed, he noticed marks in the soil. They were not fresh animal tracks. These were uneven, dragging in places, as if someone had been struggling to move forward. The cowboy slowed his horse and leaned down, studying the ground carefully. His face hardened with concern. Out here, tracks like these often meant trouble. He followed the marks quietly, his eyes moving from the ground to the land ahead. His hand rested near his side, not in fear but out of habit. He had learned long ago that the frontier did not forgive carelessness. As he came closer to the rocks near the riverbed, he saw something that made him stop completely. A woman lay against a large stone, her body still, her skin pale beneath the morning light. At first he thought she might already be gone. His heart sank at the sight. He dismounted slowly, careful not to make sudden movements, and approached her step by step. He knelt beside her and watched closely. After a moment, he noticed the faint rise and fall of her chest. She was alive, but only barely. Her breathing was shallow and her lips were dry. She looked as if the land itself had almost claimed her. The cowboy felt a tight feeling in his chest. He had seen suffering before, but it never became easy. He checked the area around them, making sure no one else was nearby. The land remained quiet. Whatever had brought her here, she was alone now. He noticed the wound on her side, old enough to be dangerous but not beyond hope. He shook his head slowly. Leaving her here was not an option. Turning away would be easier, but it would haunt him for the rest of his days. He had already lived with enough memories like that. Carefully, he lifted her, surprised by how light she felt. She stirred slightly but did not wake. He wrapped her in his spare blanket to protect her from the chill and gently placed her across his horse. The animal shifted but stayed calm, as if sensing the importance of the moment. The ride back to his cabin was slow. The cowboy chose a careful path, avoiding rough ground. He spoke softly to his horse, more for his own comfort than the animal's. The woman did not move, but her breathing remained steady enough to give him hope. As they traveled, his thoughts wandered. He knew the risks. Helping her could bring danger. People on the frontier often acted from fear, and fear led to mistakes. Still, something deep inside told him this was the right choice. He believed that saving a life mattered, even when the world around him felt cruel. When the small cabin finally came into view, the sun was already high. It stood alone among a few trees, simple and worn by time. He guided the horse closer and dismounted, moving with care as he lifted the woman again. Inside the cabin, he laid her gently on his bed. He had little, but what he had he would use. He brought water, cleaning her wound as best he could. His hands were steady, his movements slow and respectful. He kept his distance when possible, wanting to cause no fear if she woke. Hours passed. The woman did not wake, but her color slowly returned. The cowboy sat nearby, watching, listening to the sounds outside. Every creak of wood or gust of wind caught his attention. He was ready for anything, yet hoped for nothing more than her recovery. As evening approached, she stirred slightly, letting out a quiet sound. He leaned forward but did not touch her. "Easy now," he said softly, his voice calm. She did not understand his words, but the tone carried something gentle. He placed a cup of water nearby and stepped back, giving her space. The light inside the cabin dimmed as the sun lowered, shadows stretching across the floor. Outside, the land returned to its quiet state. The cowboy leaned against the wall, tired but alert. He did not know her story, her name, or the path that had brought her here. But he knew one thing: this meeting was no accident. The land had crossed their paths for a reason, even if that reason was not yet clear. As night settled in, the woman remained asleep, safe for now. The man stayed awake, watching over her, knowing that when she opened her eyes, Everything would change when the woman slowly drifted back toward awareness, though at first she did not understand where she was. Sounds reached her before sight. A faint crackling noise like wood settling, a low wind brushing against walls. The smell was unfamiliar but not unpleasant. It was warm, carrying the scent of clean water and something cooked long ago. Her body felt heavy, wrapped in tiredness, yet the sharp pain she expected did not strike her all at once. She tried to move, and a soft ache answered her effort. Her eyes opened just a little. Light filled her vision, not the bright open sky she remembered, but a gentler glow. Above her was a wooden ceiling, close and steady. She froze. This was not the land. This was not the open world she knew. Her heart began to beat faster. She forced her eyes open wider and turned her head slowly. The room was small. A table stood near the wall. A chair rested beside it. A simple shelf held a few items carefully placed. Nothing looked threatening, yet fear rose inside her like a sudden storm. She was inside a shelter. Someone had brought her here. Her hand moved weakly at her side, touching the blanket covering her. It was thick and clean. Confusion filled her thoughts. She tried to sit up, but her body protested. A quiet sound escaped her lips before she could stop it. From the corner of the room, a man shifted. He had been sitting still, watching, and rose slowly when he saw her move. He did not rush toward her. He took one careful step forward and then stopped, keeping space between them. She saw him clearly now. He wore simple clothes worn by work and travel. His face was tired but calm. His eyes held no anger, only caution and something else she did not yet understand. Her fear sharpened. She pulled the blanket closer to herself, her breathing quick and uneven. The man raised his hand slightly, palms open, showing he meant no harm. He spoke softly, his voice low and steady. The words meant nothing to her, but the tone carried patience. He moved slowly to the table and lifted a cup of water, holding it where she could see. She watched every movement closely, ready to react if she had to. Her mind raced. She remembered closing her eyes under the stars, believing she would never wake again. Now she lay in a strange place, alive. The change felt unreal, like stepping into someone else's life. The man set the cup down within her reach and stepped back again. He waited. She stared at the water for a long moment. Her throat burned with thirst and her body ached for relief. After a few seconds that felt much longer, she reached out and lifted the cup with trembling hands. She drank slowly, careful not to spill. Cool water slid down her throat, bringing a sense of relief so strong it almost made her cry. When she finished, she lowered the cup, her strength fading quickly. The man nodded slightly, as if encouraging her without words. She lay back against the bed, exhaustion washing over her again. Her eyes never left him. He returned to his seat but remained alert, watching her as closely as she watched him. Silence filled the cabin, thick but not heavy. Her thoughts drifted. She tried to understand how she had come here. Memory returned in pieces, the dry riverbed, the cold stone, the sky filled with stars. She remembered the feeling of letting go. Yet here she was, breathing, her body warm. Someone had chosen to help her when she could no longer help herself. The pain in her side reminded her of her weakness. She carefully touched the area and felt clean cloth and careful binding. It had been tended to. That thought softened her fear just a little. She looked at the man again. He noticed and met her gaze, then slowly looked away, giving her space. His actions spoke more clearly than words. He was cautious but respectful. Hours passed slowly. Light shifted through the small window, marking the movement of the day. The man moved quietly around the cabin, preparing food, checking on her from a distance. Each time she stirred, he paused, making sure she was comfortable. Eventually, hunger made itself known. Her stomach tightened and she felt weak again. She shifted restlessly. The man noticed and brought a small bowl, placing it on a nearby stool. The food was simple and warm. He stepped back once more. She hesitated, then reached for it. Each bite gave her strength, though she ate slowly. As she ate, she became aware of something she had not felt in a long time: safety. The cabin was quiet. No sudden sounds. No need to run. Still, she did not let her guard down completely. Her life had taught her caution. Trust was not given easily, especially in a world where kindness often came with a price. She watched the man closely, noting his movements, his expressions. He seemed alone, just as she was. When night came, the cabin grew darker, lit only by a small flame. Shadows danced along the walls. The man settled into a chair, keeping watch. She lay quietly, her strength slowly returning, her thoughts heavy. Sleep took her again, deeper this time. Her dreams were restless but not frightening. When she woke once more, the fear that had gripped her earlier had softened. Questions filled its place. Who was this man? Why had he saved her? What would happen next? She did not know the answers yet. But for the first time in many days, she believed she might live long enough to find them. Days passed quietly, marked by the slow movement of light through the cabin window and the gentle sounds of life outside. The woman grew stronger little by little. Each morning, she woke with less pain and more awareness of her surroundings. Her body still felt weak, but the sharp edge of fear that once lived inside her had begun to soften. The man kept his routine simple and steady. He rose early, stepping outside to tend to his small chores. He brought water from a nearby source, chopped wood, and prepared food with careful movements. When he was inside, he stayed mindful of her space. He never stood too close or moved suddenly. It was as if he understood that trust could not be forced. At first, they spoke very little. Words were not easy between them. Their languages were different, and even when they tried, meaning often slipped away. But small actions began to fill the empty space. He would set food near her and step back. She would nod quietly in thanks. He would notice when she struggled to sit up and place a pillow behind her without touching her more than needed. She began to sit near the window during the day, watching the land outside. The open space felt strange now. It was the same land she had once known, yet it looked different from inside the cabin. From here, it seemed calmer, less threatening. She wondered if the land had changed or if she had. One afternoon, she stood for the first time without help. Her legs trembled and she had to steady herself against the wall. The man noticed immediately but did not rush to her side. Instead, he stayed where he was, ready if she needed him. She took a careful step, then another. When she finally sat down again, tired but proud, he gave a small smile. It was the first time she had seen his face soften like that. As her strength returned, memories returned too. Not all of them were gentle. Some came with sadness, reminding her of what she had lost. At night, she sometimes woke suddenly, her heart racing. The man noticed these moments as well. He never asked questions, but he kept the cabin quiet and calm, as if protecting the peace she needed to heal. One evening, as the sky outside turned deep orange, she noticed the man sitting alone, staring at nothing in particular. His face looked heavy, shaped by thoughts he did not speak. For the first time, she realized that he, too, carried pain. It showed in the way he moved, careful and distant, as if guarding himself from the world. She slowly walked toward the table where he sat and lowered herself into the chair across from him. He looked up, surprised but not alarmed. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence felt different now, not sharp but thoughtful. She placed her hand lightly on her chest and spoke her name softly. He listened carefully, repeating it in his own way, trying to say it right. She nodded, appreciating the effort. Then he did the same, telling her his name. The exchange was simple yet meaningful. It was the first bridge built between them. From that day on, small conversations followed. They used gestures, expressions, and short words they both understood. It was slow and sometimes awkward, but it brought light moments into the cabin. She learned that he had lived alone for many years. The land was his work, his shelter, and sometimes his only companion. She shared what she could of her past, not with many words but with stories shaped by motion and feeling. She spoke of family, of moving camps, of songs once sung under open skies. He listened with respect, never interrupting. When she paused, he did not push her to continue. Outside, the world remained uncertain. Sounds sometimes carried across the land, reminding them both that danger had not disappeared. When that happened, the man became alert, watching the horizon closely. She noticed his readiness, the way he stood between the cabin and whatever might come. It stirred something inside her, a mix of gratitude and concern. As the days stretched on, a fragile bond formed. It was not built on grand promises, but on shared silence, small kindness, and the understanding that both had survived more than they wished to remember. She began to help with simple tasks, preparing food or cleaning. The man allowed it, knowing it gave her strength and purpose. One morning she stepped outside alone, breathing in the open air. The land greeted her with the same wide silence she remembered, but this time it did not feel empty. She looked back at the cabin, at the man standing in the doorway watching her, and felt something shift inside her heart. She knew she could not stay forever without choosing. The world beyond the cabin still held questions and risks. But for the first time in a long while, she was not facing them alone. Between two broken lives, something steady was growing, quiet, careful, and real. Whatever the future held, it would not be shaped by fear alone. And that knowledge gave her strength she thought she had lost forever. Morning came softly, with pale light spreading across the land. The woman woke early, listening to the quiet sounds around the cabin. A gentle breeze moved through the trees. Somewhere far away, a bird called. She lay still for a moment, breathing deeply, feeling the strength in her body that had slowly returned. The pain that once ruled her days was now a dull reminder, no longer a chain. She sat up and looked around the small room. Everything felt familiar now, the wooden walls, the simple table, the careful order of things. This place had kept her safe, given her time to heal, but her heart felt restless. She knew this peace could not last without a choice. Outside, the man was already awake. He stood near the edge of the land around the cabin, watching the horizon as he often did. His posture was calm but ready, shaped by years of living in a world that could change without warning. When he heard her step outside, he turned. They stood facing each other in the cool morning air. For a moment, neither spoke. Words were still limited between them, but understanding had grown in other ways. She looked past him to the open land, wide and uncertain. Then she looked back at the cabin. The choice weighed on her heart. She walked a few steps forward and knelt, touching the earth with her fingers. It was dry, warm, alive. This land had taken much from her, but it was also the place of her roots. Standing again, she placed a hand over her heart and then pointed toward the distance. Her eyes showed both longing and worry. The man watched carefully. He nodded slowly, understanding more than her gestures alone. He walked a short distance away and pointed toward a path leading beyond the hills. Then he pointed back to the cabin. He spread his hands, as if saying the choice was hers. She felt a wave of emotion rise inside her. No one had given her such a choice in a long time. The world had pushed her from place to place, leaving little room for decision. Now here she stood, alive, seen, respected. She took a deep breath and spoke softly, her voice steady. Though he did not understand every word, he heard the meaning. She spoke of her people, of the need to know if any remained. She spoke of the pull of her past and the fear of walking alone again. The man listened without interrupting. When she finished, he stepped closer, stopping at a respectful distance. He spoke slowly, choosing simple words. He spoke of the land, of danger, of the long roads ahead. He spoke of staying, of safety, of building a life where peace could grow. His voice held no pressure, only honesty. Silence followed. The sun climbed higher, warming the ground beneath their feet. She closed her eyes briefly, feeling the weight of the moment. She thought of the night she had closed her eyes under the stars, ready to leave this world behind. She thought of waking in this cabin, of quiet care, of shared silence. When she opened her eyes, her decision was clear. She reached out and gently touched the doorframe of the cabin, then placed her hand over her heart. She looked at him and nodded once. It was not a promise to stay forever, but a choice to live fully now, to grow strong before facing the wider world again. Relief crossed his face, followed by a quiet smile. He nodded in return, accepting her choice with respect. There was no celebration, no loud words. Just understanding. The days that followed took on new meaning. They worked together, slowly shaping a life that belonged to both of them. She helped tend a small garden near the cabin, planting seeds with care. He showed her how to repair small things, how to read signs in the land that told of weather and movement. They shared stories more easily now. She taught him words from her language. He taught her words from his. Laughter found its way into the cabin, light and surprising. The nights felt less heavy. When the wind howled outside, it no longer sounded like a warning but a reminder of the world beyond their walls. Sometimes, they sat outside at dusk, watching the sky change color. She spoke of the stars and the stories tied to them. He listened, fascinated, seeing the sky in a new way. In return, he spoke of his journeys, of mistakes made and lessons learned. Each story brought them closer, not by erasing the past, but by honoring it. The land still held risks. Once distant sounds carried through the air and they both grew alert. But they faced those moments together, prepared and calm. Fear no longer ruled their choices. One evening, as the sun dipped low, she stood beside him and looked out across the open space. She felt something she had not felt in a long time, hope. Not the fragile kind that breaks easily, but a steady warmth that stayed even when doubts appeared. She knew her journey was not over. One day, she might still walk beyond the hills to search for her people. But now she would do so with strength, not despair, with knowledge that kindness could exist in unexpected places. As night fell, they returned to the cabin. The fire burned low, casting soft light across the room. She lay down, not from exhaustion, but from peace. He sat nearby, reading the quiet signs of the world outside. The Apache woman had once closed her eyes to die. Now, as she closed them again, it was with trust. Trust in the morning, in the land, and in the life she had chosen to continue. Under the wide Wild West sky, a new story had begun, not born from fear, but from survival, choice, and the quiet power of compassion.